Chapter 11. Life begins anew. At first we even felt strange venturing out into the street. After a couple days, I started looking for a job. I walked into a machine shop a couple blocks away. The boss spoke a little German. He gave me a drill bit and told me to sharpen it. I did so. He looked at it and said, "You can start work tomorrow." How thankful I was for that French machinist in a DP camp that had taught me that you sharpen a drill bit differently than any other tool. My salary was $1 an hour. This was the Perry Manufacturing Company, makers of turnstiles for subways and stadiums. My job was to make customized parts peculiar to turnstiles, using various drills, lathe, and other machines. I worked there for 8 months at most. My first purchase for myself was a leather belt. It was so nice. I still have it to this day. And now and then I get it out and snap it a few times and reminisce. Until now, I was still holding up my pants with a piece of rope. How great I felt to have my own leather belt. Then, in May of 1952, I left Brooklyn, New York to fulfill my dream. That dream which had almost been forgotten in the struggle to stay alive. That dream I had so long ago as a 9-year-old boy in France. I left for Milwaukee, Wisconsin by Greyhound bus to go to school at Milwaukee School of Engineering, MSOE. I did not know anyone there. I had only read about Milwaukee. I knew a little English, that which was taught by a Russian teacher in high school in the camps. My parents remained in New York at this point. When I arrived in Milwaukee, I walked from the Greyhound bus station to the school. I had already been accepted at MSOE before I left New York by corresponding with them. The admissions office at the school gave me a list of apartments for rent and another list of companies hiring students. Though I couldn't speak very good English, I was able to find a room to rent with the use of a shared bathroom and kitchen, and I found a part-time job. MSOE had 3 months terms year-round at that time. I attended the summer term of 1952. I did okay, but I realized I did not have a sufficient command of the language to get me through. And I was still stateless, a citizen of no country. I therefore could not vote, could not get a passport, and had no rights as a citizen. I knew that if I served in the armed services, I could get my citizenship in 1 year, instead of having to wait the conventional 5 years. Now this became my goal. I had registered for the draft shortly after my arrival to America, while still in New York. I did not know one could just join the service, so I wrote my draft board and asked if I could please be drafted into the Army. This was during the Korean War, and they were only too happy to oblige. Within 2 weeks, I had my notice. By this time, my parents had come to Milwaukee also, and we lived in an apartment at 3rd and Centra, a nice area at that time. I was drafted into a U.S. Army infantry unit and was sent to basic training in Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. My English was still limited, and I only weighed 129 pounds. There were 4 companies in our battalion, and my company commander assigned me to be a company guidon bearer. That's me on the far left. I couldn't believe it. I felt so proud to be carrying it. On long marches, I had to carry my gear like the other soldiers, and I also had to carry the guidon. But I wouldn't have changed places with anyone for anything. I just felt proud to think I could carry this for my company. I still remember the way they fed you there. I finished the 4 months of basic training weighing 175 pounds. Midway through basic, the inspecting officer said to me, "Soldier, you need to exchange your uniform. This one doesn't fit you anymore." My parents were so worried about me at first, and they kept sending packages of food to me. Then I sent home a copy of the Thanksgiving menu. My parents couldn't get over it. They kept commenting that no country in the world feeds their soldiers that way. The entire regiment was being trained for Korea. Here is our regimental crest. And the entire regiment was sent to Korea except for 2 of us, me and 1 other soldier. Because of my ability by this time to speak 4 languages, Russian, French, German, and now English, which was getting better all the time, I was being sent to language school. Again, my life was very likely spared. 1 year later, while stationed in Georgia, I was sworn in as a citizen of the United States of America. This is a day I will never forget. For the first time in my life, I actually belonged to a country, and it was the greatest country on earth. I can tell you that I never had much patience with protesters in America, and especially none with flag burners. I only wished I would go and see what it is like in other countries. They have no idea how blessed they are to be citizens of America. After my stint in active duty, I returned to Milwaukee and re-enrolled in MSOE. And both Anatoly and Nikolai, my friends, those 2 little boys who hid during the betrayal of the Cossack at Lienz, were students at MSOE also. Nikolai didn't stay very long. He was here about 1 year, then he went to New Jersey and got his PhD and became a college professor. Anatoly got his degree in electrical engineering, like me. In 1957, while I was still an engineering student, my father was under doctor's care because of heart trouble. One morning he went to see the doctor for another checkup. The doctor telephoned later that morning to say that Dad had died. He had a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot that traveled to his lung, and he died in the doctor's office. Mother and I were in shock. But many friends surrounded us and helped us through this difficult time. And I was so thankful that God had brought Dad all the way to America with us, and that at last he once again knew the joy of living in freedom with his family. After active duty, I also served in the reserves for 6 years. And now I could get financial help for school under the GI Bill. Of course, I also worked. But now I had an adequate command of the language so that I could understand the technical engineering terms. I graduated from MSOE in March of 1958 with a degree in electrical engineering, and was immediately hired by IBM back in New York. Mother packed pots and pans for me to take along to cook my meals and all kinds of other things. But I was put on the expense account. I did not even know how to spend all that money. Some fellow engineers would take me with them to restaurants and order big steaks. I couldn't eat like that. But I did eat out most of the time. I never unpacked the pots and pans. Since my parents still lived in Milwaukee and AC Electronics was now hiring engineers in my specialty to work in a space program, I came back and applied. I began working there in 1958. I was part of a team that would build the inertial navigation guidance systems for the missiles and for the Apollo program, and then do environmental testing on the systems to make sure they would not fail during liftoff and flight. It was while I was working at AC that a fellow engineer and friend of mine there was dating a student nurse. He kept telling me about her roommate. "You just have to meet her," he would say.